Hey, what's going on, you all? Welcome back to another video. So what are we talking about in this video today? We are talking about a term called weaponized incompetence. Now, some of you may have heard of that and some of you may not have, but we're going to do a deep dive into that term in this video. But before I get into that, let me just say something very quickly. So this isn't about men versus women. Anyone can use weaponized incompetence. It's a behavior and it's not a gender trait. That said, in many heterosexual relationships where household and emotional labor falls mainly on women, it's most often women who experience it from men. Now, this stems from social conditioning and unequal expectations, not ability or really intent. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. But before I get into that, let me just go ahead and show you all a couple of videos.
Weaponized incompetence is when you purposefully perform a task really poorly so that, now this is coming from the husband, so that your wife doesn't ever ask you to do it again, like folding laundry or grocery shopping or taking care of the kids or what have you. And you have a lot of these guys purposefully doing that out there and like laughing about it. But it's these same guys that will come to you after the fact and say, well, my wife's not attracted to me anymore. Listen, being a helpless loser is not hot at all. In fact, it's the ugliest thing on the planet if you're helpless doing the most basic task. So you can do this weaponized incompetence crap and your wife can be like, oh my God, not one fiber of my being is attracted to this man anymore.
I just found out about weaponized incompetence and it is blowing my mind. All right. So weaponized incompetence is when one pretends to be bad at a common household chore, like doing the dishes, for example, in order to cause their partner to be so frustrated by that incompetence that their partner takes over dish doing responsibilities. And look, I'll be the first to admit, living in a world where you never have to do the dishes sounds like a veritable wonderland. All right. That sounds like heaven on earth. That's where I want to be. But the trade-off is that you have to walk around every single day of your life knowing in your heart of hearts that your partner, the person that you ostensibly love, genuinely believes that you are too dumb to figure out the dishwashing process. The dishes, all right, barring illness, disability, or infirmity, literally everyone on the planet can do dishes. A child can do the dishes. You could train a medium-sized dog or a seal to do the dishes. And you're going to sit there and you're going to pretend like that you just don't get it? Couldn't be me.
So I'm 55 and I just left my husband of 28 years and I should have left him 20 years ago. And I'm here to say that the minute you think it's time to leave, leave. Don't let it go 20 years. Don't let it go 20 years. Don't let it go 20 years.
If you're an unmarried young woman and you're even considering getting married, please bookmark this video because I'm going to show you what weaponized incompetence looks like in real time, how it shows up in a relationship. And let me tell you something, it never happens out of nowhere. The signs are always there. And more often than not, the mental and emotional exhaustion happens on part of the woman, not the man, especially once you get married, and even more so if you have kids. But the signs are always there even when you're dating. You know, think about a man who can't even plan a date on his own, who can't make decisions. They always look to you to make the final decision. A man who gets frustrated easily. Somebody who has been catered to by their mama. Those are all signs.
So you just saw those videos. So let's go ahead and talk about it. Weaponized incompetence is when someone pretends they can't do a task or they do it poorly on purpose so someone else will step in and just take over. This is a manipulative tactic and it avoids the effort and the accountability that comes with doing it. So in relationships, it shows up in this so-called invisible labor. You know, all the planning, all the organizing, and all the emotional work that keeps a household or partnership running smoothly that usually, falls on one person. Think of a partner who can't cook or quote unquote forgets to do laundry, right? So on the surface, it might seem innocent, but over time, that other partner ends up doing all of it. When it comes to managing schedules, bills, meals, even remembering the emotional check-ins, especially, checking in with your kids, right? This is often experienced by women in heterosexual households, not because men are inherently incapable, but because social norms push domestic and emotional labor really on the women. So many people argue that, if the man leaves the house to work, then the woman should handle the domestic work. And on the surface, that seems fair, right? But here's the reality of it. Many women also nowadays work outside the home too. And unlike a job, which has defined hours and ends when you clock out, being a parent doesn't come with a clock out button. And anyone out there who's a parent, Motherhood and parenting in general is just continuous. You don't get to leave your responsibilities behind at 5 p.m. You wake up in the middle of the night when a child is sick, when a child is vomiting at 4 a.m. or just, needing attention. Sometimes kids, they just want to come in your room in the middle of the night for no reason. And they just want to get in your bed. And then you're like, what's wrong with you? What's going on? And they're like, nothing. So now you have to sleep all uncomfortable, and then, that you have their feet on you. Kids sleep the worst when they're in your bed. I don't know why. But when that labor is overwhelming and it goes unseen, people call it invisible chores. It's not just about tossing clothes in the washing machine. It's remembering to take them out, put them in the dryer, add a dryer sheet, fold them, and then hang them up. And yet, if someone looks at these tasks and think, oh, that's mediocre or that's simple, it begs the question, why do we pay maids to clean then? Chefs to cook? Why do we pay Uber and Lyft drivers to drive? Why do we pay nurses to, care for the sick? Because at the end of the day, it's all work. It's still labor. But, when it comes to parenting, especially when it comes to motherhood, all of that effort, somehow it gets condensed into the single word of mommy, right? Just mommy. That's why sometimes a lot of moms will often feel, minimized or just simply taken for granted. And when someone says, well, you chose to be a mom, that's true. Choosing motherhood like any other career doesn't make the challenge any less real. And mothers still deserve the respect. They still deserve the recognition and the shared responsibility. Just as no one would ever minimize the work of a chef simply because they chose that career. You know what I mean? So the one key thing about weaponized incompetence is that people, they tend to prioritize what they care about. If someone consistently fails to do a task that, that's important to you, but handles, other tasks like it's really easy, it's not really the lack of skill. It's the lack of willingness. They're just not willing. And, to get more subtle, they may ask you to tell them exactly what to do. But the reason why they do that is because if it doesn't get done, then they could turn around and claim you never instructed them. That way, the responsibility shifts onto you and they get to remain innocent. And when someone complains, when someone, pushes back, or when someone nags, they minimize it by saying, oh, you're overreacting, or you're doing too much, or saying, it's not a big deal. But think about it. If it truly wasn't a big deal, then they would do it themselves. Here's the thing. The reason why they don't do it or only do half of it, because deep down inside, they know it's work. And not only do they know it's work, they know that if they do it, they're going to want to be praised for doing that work. So if they want praise for doing what is expected of any reasonable adult, why wouldn't they recognize the labor when someone else does it? Why wouldn't they see the effort and the mental load and the invisible work that goes into keeping life running smoothly? A partner will suddenly act responsibly or, get things right after something serious happens. such as filing for a divorce or moving out or, enforcing a boundary or some type of financial loss, and when people fear loss, and it doesn't even have to be inside of a relationship, whenever people fear loss, they tend to quote unquote change. When they fear the loss of the marriage, when they fear the loss of the house, when they fear the loss of the money or the comfort that they've been taken for granted, they tend to change. And I don't mean change, permanently, just change temporarily. That's when the truth becomes clear that they were always capable of doing the work. They just didn't want to until it affected them directly, until they actually saw the consequence of them not doing it. It goes to show that it was the ultimate proof that the behavior was just strategic, whether it was consciously done or whether it was unconsciously done. When you see that someone, really can't do something or they're really having a hard time, and you see them trying to get it right, of course, I think they deserve patience. Of course, I think they deserve support, but, when it's just this deliberate avoidance, that's when it requires accountability. You don't want someone doing it because they feel forced to do it, So at the end of the day, relationships really work when both people are present and, actively showing up like every day, and that's not to say you can't take a break. That's not to say you don't get tired. That's not to say you want to take a nap. That's not to say you want to go hide in a closet somewhere. It's not to say that. It just means taking responsibility and sharing the mental and emotional load. And also, most importantly, the way I feel, just, being able to step up without being prompted, because, in life, as much as we want to clock out, sometimes we just can't. Sometimes we just really, really, really get tired of people. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, stuff still got to get done. Kids still need to be picked up for school. You still got to cook. I'm washing clothes right now. You know what I'm saying? So that's all I wanted to come and say. You all just make sure you're just showing up or trying your best, to show up, because, you don't want to allow consequences to make you see. You want to notice the invisible labor. And you also want to be able to, value the contributions that someone else is making. You know what I'm saying? So that's all. And I'll see you all in the next video. Y'all take care.